Quick disclaimer before we start. I did not do the trades that I planned in last week's video. So I did end up getting Kane Bradley, but as you can see, there's some unfamiliar names in there, and I'll just go quickly through them right now. It was a crazy week last week. Everybody was just dropping left, right, and center. Late updates on Bird, in, out, and finally out. I know a few people unfortunately locked in Catchman to Bird, ended up not being able to reverse because Catchman already played. Really, really rough there. And if you're one of those, my condolences. I ended up getting rid of these three, and I'll go through the reasons why. Catchman looks season long. There's word out now that potentially he might not be needing surgery, but that's still going to be out for a while. Bird, if he's out because of injury and he's Jack Bird and he's not useful, he's just going to go out. Sorry. And Ewan Aitken, I got pulled up from this in the last video. I don't know why I keep calling him Owen when he starts with EU, but we'll go with that. Ewan Aitken, my thoughts were he hasn't been doing quite as well lately. And if you think about it, he misses round 18 because he was out, round 19 because of the bye, and then he has a later bye as well, I think in round 25. That's 3 weeks that I'm missing him for the last 9 or 10. So that's too many in my book. That's almost like holding someone through injury. And given the other circumstances and that he was just out, I didn't like having him in my team. And he was an easy sell compared to some of the others. I've showed my bench last week with all these guys like AFB, Kai Pierce, Paul. It just didn't make sense to trade them compared to the guys that were actually out injured. So Eli Katoa came in, really excited to own him for the run home. He looks dangerous with Hughes in attack. And far out, there's got to be not many people who can kick chase and jump and get a try like that as a forward in the comp. Nanai sort of comes to mind as the attacking guy who'll run through. Maybe Liam Martin follows well, but Eli Katoa could be really dangerous on this run home for a little bit cheaper than like your Prestons of the world and stuff like that. I also ended up bringing in Foketi, and thankfully for me this week he's still starting. So Foketi, nice 45, made a little bit of coin. But now moving on to this week. So I came through this TLT relatively unscathed because I sold Jack Bird last week. Only thing I have to look out for is, well, is Cleary actually going to play? My plan at the moment is to loop Fainu and Savala because Savala's been fantastic, but with Walker in the team, it's a little bit more uncertain how it will go, and the Dolphins have been on fire lately, so maybe not as big as he has been going recently. Jamal Fogarty helps me loop him nicely, and I will likely be using Kane Bradley to potentially loop some of these guys. Maybe I push around Nwanga to wing fullback and Campbell up to the halves if I don't like what I see from the other options. So we'll see how that goes there. On my chopping block this week is pretty easily, in fact, Le'i Apawade. So let's actually look at his stats very quickly and show why I'm looking at selling him rather than just having him as a sort of 19th man for depth, other than the fact that he hasn't been doing crash hot the last few weeks. It's been partially because Turbo is acting as the fullback in attack at times. He's sweeping a lot, getting really involved, and Lehi just isn't getting involved so much in the attacking side to Ruben Garrick on the left as much as what I hoped he would be. Yeah, not really good scores from him for those 2 weeks. I'll take some points in that round where there was a lot of carnage, but yeah, good running, just no attack, barely any tackle breaks. It's a far cry from what he's been doing at wing and at fullback earlier in the year with no Turbo. So I'm pretty happy to move him on at this point. Now, who am I looking to buy? I have a lot of money in the bank. The first thought that I probably have is it finally time to get on Farnworth? And look, yes, but I just bought Karaz. The Wonganita was going to be a sell, but now the last 4 to 6 weeks, he's just shown that he is that guy for the Roosters. He's like the Joey Manu that you just give the ball to him and something will happen, and his tackle breaking and attacking prowess is insane. Like, he had no right to score that try from the centres. It was insane. He just bulldozed through about 3 people. I don't even think anybody got a try assist for that. So Nawa, Lucas, Karaz seems a pretty good trio. And if Nawa keeps pumping out pretty good numbers along with Lucas and Karaz, I don't think I'm going to lose out as much on Herbie as I was worried about. I still think it'll lose me and bleed me a few points, but at 856k, that's Haas price, that's nearly Cleary price. I don't think it's actually really helpful for me to bring in at the moment, considering my team value is, well, quite a bit below some of these other top shelf guys who are now looking to bring in a full set of elite guns. So what do? Who is a gun and a keeper in my team? All these starters, except probably Savala, I would say are huge and guys I absolutely want to play 9 times out of 10 every week. And then I've got these 5 down the bottom. These are probably the only 5 other than, let's just bring Cook down there. He played 80 minutes last week, had a bit of an eyebrow-raising, interesting situation. Still didn't score as well as I was hoping, but it's likely these guys. So Feketi is not a sell. Fainu is not a sell. Kane Bradley's out, and it's just a basement looper. Hopewade and Cook is pretty much the go at this point. Who can I get for Lehigh Hopewade? Let's have a look at that now. Now, he gets me up to 762k, and that gets me everybody except Farnworth and Hudson Young. I would love to buy Latrell Mitchell or even Dylan Edwards, given what they might be able to do on the run home. But at this point, I've got a lot of backline. It's possible that I get another one, but middle forwards are just the go at this point. This year, this strategy. Outside backs come into their own towards the end, but the meta is pretty much middle forwards like Payne Haas, like Kolomatangi, like May these days. So let's have a look at who's available. Preston, not super interested in at the moment. He's great, but I've got Eli Katoa and Kai Pearce-Paul. Tarpanay's minutes are atrocious. No. Yo, yes, but backing up this week and in the reserves, I might try and do that late if I can at all. And will they rest players? Probably not this year. Probably not, given they're a little bit pressed to make the top 4. I think given the ladder situation, they still have got a fair way to go before they get to the top. Yeah, they're only as many wins as sort of 9th, 10th. They're 1 win behind these kind of guys, and I would expect them to start winning a lot, but they're still 5 points behind the Warriors and 3 full wins. So I think that they probably won't rest players as much. They might give them a bit of a spell in round 27, but I would be pretty confident unless they're absolutely locked in for a home final for like 5th, 6th, and top 4 is completely out of reach. Maybe then they can do it, but the ladder is close enough that I think you can't really rely on that. I think that given the Dolphins and the Broncos and Manly all have a bye to go and are on at least 1 more win than the Panthers, and the Panthers also play the top 3 right before the finals, I think it'll be pretty close. I think the Panthers will be 5th or 6th, but unless that is guaranteed by a lot, I don't think they're going to rush out and rest everybody, because that loss might actually push them back out. I think they will climb, but how far is the question. So Yo is probably on my watch list to come in this week. Latrell Mitchell is on a bye, can't do that. Connor Watson, he's an interesting one. Now, He's probably interesting because he's coming on and playing a lot of lock in recent games. If you look up Iowelu, what he's been doing in recent weeks, he's been coming off and playing hooker a fair bit. Even in this game, between the two Origin matches, played 51 minutes, and Watson, I think, still played 80 in that game. Let's have a look. Connor Watson. Yeah, so Watson is moving to lock during that time, and it's good signs for his scoring if he can do that. So moving to Connor Watson's profile, we can see in these last couple of matches, in this last match here, he did a lot more running, which is great because he doesn't get as much of that at hooker. Yeah, maybe he'll drop a tackle or two compared to some of these. But 80 minutes while another hooker is playing minutes is really, really promising to me. Price, a little bit awkward. And I mean, we've got lots of Roosters. So we'll see. Paddy Carrigan, just chuck a star on him. I think he's a bit too expensive to really think about, but you've got Payne-Haas managing a back injury with injections, and Corey Jents is now out for 6 weeks. After their bye in round 20, and he's dropped a little bit more in price this week, at a 700k, Pat Carrigan may be a really good shout for the run home. If he's playing 65, 70 minutes, you get Carrigan whacking out 60 plus sort of scores. Through this period from round 7 onwards, when he was playing 70 minutes a game, he was hitting mid 60s almost every game, which is exactly what you want in your team. But there is somebody else who may be in that camp for middle forward at a much cheaper price, actually, I should thought, and that is Tino. So Tino's averaging 54, but is a little bit cheaper than some of these other options. And part of that is because, well, sternum injury. That really impacts your output as a forward. And you can really see the drop off. So he was hitting a couple of low scores early on, but outside of that, 70, 60, 60, 70, 70, 60, then he hurt himself a bit and really dropped his points per minute. 51 in 71, 36 in 53, 24 in 37, and even 54 in 68. So there's a huge drop off there. He's dropped well over 100k, and his break even is still very high. He came out and said, though, now this may be a tiny bit unreliable, but he did come out and say somewhere that it's feeling a lot better and he's ready to get stuck in. I might have to go and chase that one down, actually, so I'm not just telling fibs. But if Tino is actually fit and he looks good, I think that he really is a very good target for the run home because he is 100k cheaper than Yo and might be able to put out numbers that aren't too far off. At 461k, I would really love a piece of that. Nico Hines, I struggle to say buy him even at his price, but there is one little thing. If you ignore the tricky trindleitis that he's been infected with the last year or two, there's one little thing that props him up as a very interesting shout. Angus Crichton also, his sort of base stats are really good. I'll go to Angus very quickly. I'm not going to buy him, but I'd pretty strongly recommend him if you need some budget options because he's doing quite a lot. He's offloading a lot. He's tackling okay amount, and his run meters are okay. This offloading really is quite helpful. Overall, if you take the average of that, that's 30 points. Tackle breaks and missed tackles are a net 0, basically. About 8 points in offload, so 38, 50. So 50 points in base and power related statistics, 0 attack whatsoever. He got a few line breaks at the beginning of the year, was doing quite well. Then he dropped off a cliff. He didn't offload as much, sure, whatever. But he's getting no tries. And I think a big reason for that is just the absence of Sam Walker. Sandon and Savala has been a really good partnership, but I was listening to, I can't remember who it was, of the day. And Sam Walker loves the little chip kicks, and it's really dangerous for the opposition because then in two minds about what to do. And you get this sort of streak from Angus sometimes. You get big try scoring runs. And 0.6 tries a game as an attacking elite edge back rower is a lot better than 0.1, and he's still averaging 50. So is he the safest pick in the world? Absolutely not. But 0 people own him. Like 4 people in the top 5,000 own him. 4 people. And with this, well, these next couple of weeks against Dragons and Cronulla, a leaky Cronulla at that, aren't too bad. I don't mind Angus. I think he's a really sneaky pickup for a very cheap price. And when he's less expensive than Hosking, I know who I would much prefer in my team. Now, going back to Hines, I'm going to switch over to this sheet now. I have not used this much this year. I only revamped it in the last week or so. So let's actually have a look at it. Let's pretend all of this stuff does not exist. That is gone. Origin is gone. We're all about the run home. I updated the ladder. Let's zoom in and see what we actually have here now. So red equals top 4, orange is top 5 to 8, yellow is bottom but not bottom 5, so just outside the 8, and green is easy. Look at this Penrith run. That is the bottom 5 teams. That is the easiest possible run you could get. It's then followed by the hardest possible run you can get. But, I mean, it's the Panthers, and they've started to show that they're ready to defend. So if you're picking somebody like Yo, maybe he goes low across some of these games, but I don't know, maybe he jags an attacking stat. Cleary, if he looks fit, is going to pop off. If you sold Cleary during Origin, I think you have to get him back at least by round 20 because you're going to want him and need him even more than maybe you would as standard, given these really, really soft matchups. Dylan Edwards as well. If Cleary does look like he's still a little bit hampered by that leg injury and Dylan Edwards gets goals, oh my goodness, Dylan Edwards, the pot of the century with that run for the next 5 weeks. So if you need a wing fullback this week, you can't get Latrell because he's on the bye. Watch Dylan Edwards and Cleary very closely in Origin, and Edwards might be a play. So now, onto the Sharkies. There's not as dramatic a run as the Panthers, but overall, they don't play anybody hard apart from kind of the Dolphins and the Roosters a little bit until the last week of the year where Canterbury may rest players if they're solidified in the top 4 or even bounce back into the top 2. I don't think they'll bounce into the top 2, but you never know. And they may be missing a few players. So honestly, Sharks needing to get back in or as high as they can in the 8 versus a weakened Canterbury possibly, and Finn's Origin stars backing up from Origin, that's about as good as you get for the run home. Raiders is okay. Warriors, where's Warriors? Warriors is okay as well, especially the next few weeks. So there's runs to target here, especially for your backline players. Looking down at the actual stats of it now, we can immediately see Panthers 15.5 average ladder opponent next 4 games, easiest by far. Warriors, Broncos, all good to target. Storm okay. Don't try and get Fletcher Hunt. He's going to get brutalized over the next few weeks against the top teams, I reckon. Eels and Seagulls as well. Turbo owners probably happy to own, but I don't think I'd jump on with that run coming up. And yeah, Lehigh Hopewade, I'm just getting off now. So overall for the rest of the season, you've got this. Sharks just stands out as the best. I've sorted them here by descending ladder position of the opponent. Sharks is by far the easiest, and you've got 3 quite easy teams. And yeah, down the bottom of those. Panthers is by far the easiest stretch coming up. So watch out for those. If you need a specific round to target for later on, the easiest stretches 4-game stretches are these. A lot happening from now in round 19, and consequently a lot of really tough ones, as you can see. Sharks gets the best it will possibly get from round 21 onwards. Cowboys gets easy from round 22, and Rabbitohs' last 4 games of the year are the easiest. So you can wait a tiny bit on the Cowboys and Rabbitohs if you want to. Cowboys and Rabbitohs. So Rabbitohs, yeah, Penrith into Cronulla into Brisbane's tough, but in Gold Coast, Para, Dragons, and Roosters to finish is pretty nice. Pretty nice. So keep an open mind as you go into this run home. It's very, very hard to make up ranks if your team is the same as everybody. If you're happy to do that, you can definitely grind up ranks. I can probably grind up to, I don't know, just outside the top 1,000, I think, with good planning and a few extra trades and a nice setup. But I don't know if I'm going to make it into the top 1,000 now at this point of the season when we've made really good cash this year. And there's a lot of same players floating about. So unless I do something like Lehigh Hopewadi to Dylan Edwards, it's going to be a little bit tough for me to actually make ranks unless my pod plays kill it. Do you have to go pods? Absolutely not. But it's sort of the time of year to think about who do I actually think is going to go well in the run home? Can I buy an Angus Crichton? Can I buy a Tino? Can I buy a Pat Carrigan? Can I buy a Latrell Mitchell or Dylan Edwards? And the answer, if you've got the funds and the team set up elsewhere to be able to go into that without too much risk and just have a flyer on them, absolutely it's the season to do that. I'm probably going to go that route to try an antipod Herbie at the moment because he's 100K more than all these guys who I want to average 60 or 65. That's too much to pay for him if you're an owner, as most people are at this point up top. You're laughing because he's averaging 70 without tries. It's mental, absolutely mental. So I'm still a little bit at a loss as to where to go this week from Hopewadi. I think the key is going to be watch Cleary, Yo, and Edwards in Origin. See who's kicking, see who plays a lot of minutes. Possibly go one of those Panthers. It might end up being Dylan Edwards yet. The weakest position in my team is probably it's probably a little bit of half depth, I guess, unless I make Jaden Campbell a semi-permanent option as a half and I buy another wing fullback. So that could help. I could get some more mids because they're really, really big. Maybe I'd buy Connor Watson to help with that. Use some hooker depth. Get Cook out of there. There's a lot of things I could do. At this stage, I don't see a clear path to trade anybody specifically in. There's a few that I like, as I've just mentioned. I think most of those are pretty good buys. Some of them maybe wait a week or two on them, like your Carrigans and Tinos of the world, just to see how they go, especially backing up from Origin. And yeah, I don't think there's a lot I can do this week to strengthen my main 13 anyway. And so maybe it's a week to just hold. Lehigh Hopewadi to Trell seems pretty nice. Lehigh Hopewadi to Dylan Edwards also sounds pretty nice. But I might only do that if Cleary doesn't back up. And then I can put Campbell up there and loop one of these guys. Maybe I bring in a Jerome Hughes, I don't know. But Jerome Hughes also seems like he's not as needed in attack. Like they almost take turns. If you're a Supercoach player, you're probably frustrated by this Storm Spine because one of them will ton up each week and the others will kind of get 50, which is like the equivalent of like a 38 in fantasy sort of a thing. So Jerome Hughes kick meters are helping him out last while he's been good. But it's not as crazy as it was last year. It's been really solid this last week, this last month. and he's made 130K from that now and is priced with most of these other guys. I think he's a good option, but now that the origin is also over, the appeal is a little bit less, I guess. If Savala doesn't go well with Sam Walker, I think I will need another half. But at this point, it's a battle between Hughes shoving Campbell up there, Katoa. There's a few options. And given that he's not cheaper now, it's not as slam dunk as it was. So for my team, it still doesn't fix my questions. Terrell May is probably going to be my captain for the rest of the year because Payne Haas is getting injections into his back. I would love to say Haas is a buy and a captaincy option. Look, he came out and scores tons after Origin, after potentially having injury worries, but I still don't like slapping the C on somebody who does have that. And for now, I will go Terrell May until further notice because both the other backup options are broken. So, lots of looping here. Pretty easy and standard to know how to do it. Fogarty using that. Those two. Carraz potentially using Fogarty with Campbell in. So there's sort of some double positional looping going on with there. So let's go into Supercoach now because I'm having a little bit more success there. I made some ranks in fantasy, but Supercoach, this is my new highest rank that I've ever been, ever, which is really, really exciting. I'm still third in the Podmasters League. I can't catch those other two. Do you know who the top place in that league brought in last week? Do you know who they brought in? They brought in Nick Meaney. They brought in Nick Meaney because Pappenhausen was out, and they're like, "Ooh, if Pappenhausen's injured, he might get goals for a few weeks. He'll play fullback. Matchup is good, and you need that to win Supercoach or fantasy. Sometimes you need the foresight to be able to go, that's a good snap decision and a good play. And far out. That's 100 points boost to them, and I think it took them from about 30th, 27th into the top 10 and now actually in contention to win it. So I think this week is very, 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 very pivotal. This week and next week are pivotal for Supercoach because, again, like fantasy, we've got stacked teams if you're relatively well ranked. And you probably want about 20 players that are really good and you can play in all weeks or at least most weeks with matchups. At the moment, the only place I can really look to improve is probably hooker. So, and maybe second row. So I went Connor Watson in for Sandon Smith. Easy, Sandon's not in the team. Makes sense. I could go Harry Grant, probably not. And nothing out to going helps for Hosking, helps me get enough coin to do whatever the heck I want next week with McInnes and Hughes, Hines, Cleary, and Edwards. So if Pappenhausen doesn't back up, I will very, very likely go Pappenhausen out to either Cleary or Edwards and leave Hines and Hughes and force that decision to come later down the track. Maybe I bring in Cleary, stick him there, decide who to sell out of these two later, shove that up, and buy Latrell Mitchell. That could be a real play for me. And McInnes. McInnes is definitely going to go out because he was only ever playable at hooker, but Watson is just better, probably. And yeah, I think the go with Cam McInnes is just going to be him out to the best second rower or centre wing. I can bring Kane Bradley up, switch him with Dylan Lucas, and make Dylan Lucas a permanent centre wing. I slightly prefer him up here though, given that the best guys up here are averaging high 70s, 80s, and the best second rowers are sort of averaging high to mid 70s. So let's have a look at who the Clever Clogs are bringing in this week. I agree with a good chunk of these. And yeah, Connor Watson, huge in this week. Like Nwanga Waze, far out, over 70% owned up the top now. He was like 20 at the beginning of last week and was brought in by like 40% of the top guys. So Angus, as I said in fantasy, tries are even more important in Supercoach. So if he gets that going with Sandon Smith, huge. I prefer to wait a week on Angus, and that's probably going to be what I'm going to do with McInnes. Lomax in, huge with tries and goals. Kick out. I'm not as hot on this one given in how, but yeah, I mean, Galvin's back out of the halves, but I still don't love the whole situation of Galvin switches in mid-game. Kickout is doing really well with his base and power, though. So if you add the attacking stats, usually that will go. He wasn't getting any ball with Galvin. That could just be teething issues. If he goes back to getting regular ball and tries, big from him. Mam just continues to get it done at 5/8. He's cheap enough, but if you don't have Jaden Campbell, just get Jaden Campbell. Better. Cleary's fine. But I want to focus specifically on these two positions, 5/8 and centre wing. Mam is a buy, sure. I guess. Don't love it. Jaden Campbell is a huge buy. Not injured. It was injured, but not like soft tissue injury. It was HIA and a week stand down, now back fully fresh and ready to go. KO Weeks bashed out 150 last week and is now priced up with these guys. Unless you jumped on, I probably wouldn't go him. And considering the number of good options this week and weeks on the buy, don't do it. Tana Boyd is now starting and is going to get goals, and he is at that price. If you have a guy to trade out at 5/8 and you don't necessarily want to bring in a Cam Munster, or a Jaden Campbell, don't have the corner, you want to spend coin in other places because you're not going to play them all the time, Tanner Boyd might be your guy. He's probably got that spot locked now with Metcalf ACL injury. Thoughts and condolences to him and wish him best for the recovery. Tanner Boyd is going to be the guy that sits in that role now. So I like him. Another one I also like is pretty much anybody in this Panthers backline, to be honest. So Blaze Tulagi starting to look pretty decent the last couple of weeks in the Panthers attack. It's still not full strength. It's still not full Panthers standard, I should say. It's probably only 6, 7 out of 10, but their defense is back up and they play the worst 5 teams in the comp. Blaze Tulagi at 5/8 or even at centre wing, I think, is a really good smash and grab for some huge scores over the next while. And then maybe when it comes into those hard ones, you flick him to whoever's the best at the time, whether that's Jaden Campbell or Munster or even Ezra, maybe even somebody like a Burton. But yeah, all right. Fainu, he's gone. If you didn't get on him, he's too expensive now, and Boyd is cheaper. Tamari Martin would have been nice, but it's not going to happen now, unfortunately. He's on the interchange and not starting. So there's a few options at 5/8. If you need somebody, I think all of these are really good options. And look how pod they are. This is the run home. They're going to stay pod because most people are set on their final teams apart from a few players. They might not need Tana Boyd. Might not be able to fit a Tana Boyd like me. And if only a few people own Blaze Talangi and he hits 200s in the next 5 weeks and finishes up with an 80 average over that period, you have won. You've beaten everybody else. And there's options. If Boyd knocks out a 60 average with goals, let's say, in a good Warriors team, at that price, you're cheering. You might have even played him for 1 or 2 of those. So that's good. Let's go to centre wing now, which is by far my favourite position for this week. I'm really excited by centre wing because you can do so much with it, and the pods are starting to arrive. If we look just at ownership, nearly everybody owns the big 4 or most of the big 4, and if you aren't, you're probably bringing them in this week. I could probably even say the big 5 with Lomax. He's the only one that isn't high ownership with that and is probably going to average top 5 centre wing almost guaranteed for the run home. I think you need 4 out of those 5 at a minimum, and then you can look at others like I'd say these are the best options. Nawa, Izako, probably in the next tier. Probably you can put Ruben Garrick down into that tier, given their rough run home. And then you need one other good centre wing, maybe even two, if you put Kane Bradley or enough up in second row instead of centre wing. And I don't mind that because stacking centre wing when teams are raring and attacking in the run home is kind of the play. I don't want to see lots of second rowers stacked on the bench for high 500s, low 600s that aren't playing. I don't want to see people bringing in Isaiah Yeo and not playing him. I don't want to see people bringing in like your Colomatungis and not playing him. All of these guys you probably should be playing, but your Hoskings, your McInneses, your Savalas, their time has finished. They're not going to be playable most weeks, especially with guys like the troops from Origin returning and Nicholson eventually for Hosking especially. I think it's time for one more big guy like Angus, like Hudson Young, or Tino if he starts playing well and you sold him, and then you sit there. But yeah, it's pretty much just those four centre wing, four second row. For centre wing, I love the options. If Pappenhausen is in doubt, and like he is, and doesn't play, meaty fullback, meaty goals, it's going to be really nice. It's going to be that really cheap centre wing 6 probably for your run home. And if he eventually has to go, well, his break even is minus 42. You probably have ridden him up to mid 600s or something like that. Blaze Talangi, I've already talked about. Love him at centre wing. Thomas Jenkins, even. He's pretty expensive and a bit yuck to bring in at this point. But, I mean, he's on the wing and Casey McLean's finally learnt to pass in the last while, which is shocking. Connor Tracy, yeah, he exists, but I don't think his ceiling is as high as some of these other guys. Mulatalo with that Sharks draw. Again, remember, they play an average of 12.25 for the rest of the season. And the first one of that is the Dolphins this week. So honestly, maybe Mully is a next week play when he's about 400k flat and his break evens come down a little bit. And he's got an average ladder position of like 13 for the rest of the year. Love that as well. A couple guys who aren't mentioned here who I do actually quite like. Who was I thinking of? Oh, yeah. Holmes also is just a gun. To run home's a bit hard, but get him in. Who were the guys who I was thinking of as centre wing that are really, really low ownership? Timoko is very low ownership. On the buy, yes, you can wait, but he's finally starting to look really free and not hampered by injury with the Raiders run home. I think he can have a couple of big boom games. Maybe not the best and ultimate crazy option, but he's definitely there. I'm missing a couple of guys. Let me just select it to play. Yeah, Casey McLean himself, 570k. Let's look at his stats. Why do I like him? Well, yes, he scored 19 in 66 minutes in round 8. In an injury game, take that away. Injury game, round 1, take that away. He's still averaging 57. You take those out, and he's averaging close to 70. So if you give him that run, you give him a few tries, you get stuff like this. You get 80s, you get 70s and 60s. Maybe he's not the highest ceiling guy. And yeah, he's not necessarily playing on the wing, but I don't mind him at all. High break even though as well, so don't have to go this week. There's one other. Who am I missing? There's one other guy who I was really, really high on. It might have been Murray Tulagi, but he's missing, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So he was out injured last week. I've talked him up. Probably not a go now. Cowboys run is pretty good, but yeah, the go with him is Clifford just helps his average. 3 of his 4 games without Clifford were the 3 worst scores he had this year. And he's over a 70 average without it. So there's plenty of options. Lots and lots and lots of really good purchases. And I think that is going to be very exciting. That is very, very cool because everybody's going to have a different team starting the next few weeks. Everything looks quite same. If you're doing okay, you've probably got like 17 or 18 of the most owned players. I know that I'm pretty well along that. If I pick even the top 10% owned, I own the 17 most owned. I just sold Sandon. I have Campbell and I used to have Hosking. So my team has been pretty bog standard this year. It hasn't been very poddy. You might think of Scoop as the pod guy. And I have been running Pod Hunter for the Supercoach Hub this year. But this is the week. This is the week that you can go rogue and start to go with that. So for me, I'm going to do that next week because I get Latrell Mitchell. I get information on Dylan Edwards and Cleary. I get another week to look at McInnes to see if he's going to still score 60s, which I'll still probably sell him for. And I also get a look at Hudson Young in Origin to see if he's looking like he's moving freely. There was a radio interview where it said that he felt stronger and ready to go, basically, and unhindered now, which is what you want to hear, considering that he had osteitis pubis injury, which is probably limiting his explosiveness. So that's my plan. Savala is probably going to sit in my team unless Walker really stifles him. It's kind of like that last ditch play if I have to on a matchup, rather than, probably not really going to play him, but still worth 500-600K. He's probably the only borderline guy in my team. Parapani, I'm happy to play most weeks or on and off, depending on the Broncos matchups, because he's in the most profitable spot in the whole game. That Broncos left wing scores more tries than any other spot in any club this year, and he is sitting in it. Remember, Jesse Arthurs at the beginning of the year went mental, exact same reason. So that's where I'm going with this. Big watch on Pappenhausen, big watch on Cleary and Edwards, big watch on some of these pod options. If you want to jump early, do it by all means. For me, I'm probably going to wait a week, figure out how I'm going to get Cleary or Dylan Edwards, and go one pod in these two positions. And that'll probably do my team for the run home. 8 trades left with a final consolidated team. Nafahu White's been the best hold. What a gun. Yeah, he's allowing me to do all of this at second row and keep Tino there because he's like the best backup guy and somebody who, if I have to play in a pinch, probably won't let me down given how good he's going. Did you know that he outbased Terrell May last week in their matchup? Absolute mental. That's enough of me ranting, guys. Mostly just who I'm mostly interested in this week. Across both platforms, there's a lot of opportunity to start going rogue, to pick some really cool, fun, interesting players. I like a lot of them. A couple of them, there's question marks over. So whether you want to try and get ahead of the pack and jump now, or get a little bit of extra information, that's up to you. If you're low trades, I'd probably lean the latter, get a little bit of information, especially if Origin doesn't end up giving us that much detail. So one to watch for, and go Queensland, underdogs forever.